Well, Pascal, Lord of the Rings of Power. Let's have a look at the trailer that was released on the 14th of July. And this is one of the main trailers for the series that gets launched today. Let's have a look.
There was a time when the world was so young. There had not yet been a sunrise. But even then, there was light.
Come to me, lands far away.
Elves have forests to protect. Dwarfs their mines. Men their fields of grain. But we Harfoots have each other.
For I must now wander this wandering day.
We're safe.
You have fought long enough, Galadriel. Put up your sword.
The enemy is still out there. The question now is where?
It is over.
You have not seen what I've seen.
I have seen my share.
You have not seen what I have seen.
Darkness will march over the face of the earth. It will be the end, not just of our people, but all peoples.
I am sorry, but their time has come.
The past is with us all.
The past is dead. We either move forward or we die with it.
This could be the beginning of a new era.
Away I must wander this wandering day.
We said earlier we aren't to use words like amazing and great and wow, but you sort of have to, don't you?
Oh, I mean, everything is right. The music, the way it looks, the way it sounds. And I'm absolutely convinced, because you've got to give them the fact that they know what they are doing, that this is barely the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be so many surprises and twists and turns and new characters and new locations that we've not seen. No wonder it is, the cinematic event of all times, even though it is straight to TV via Amazon Prime.
I mean, the visuals, just from the trailer, look pretty much better than anything we've seen on film or TV ever.
No, absolutely. So you mentioned that we reviewed part one of the campaign. This is what we're calling it, of course. That took us to the 16th of February 2022, where at the time they had released a teaser trailer after revealing the name of the series. So, and we looked at what they'd done with the teaser posters, what they'd done with engaging the fans, with a bit of mystery shopping around the different channels and so on. So looking at, again, primarily the activities on Facebook and Instagram, there was a bit of a lull, and then they picked things up again on the 19th of April. So, there is a big gap between that. I mean, they had a quick note to the Tolkien Reading Day. They already does. But in terms of the marketing of the series, there was this single social media post that, frankly, many could have missed, because it was so quiet between between February and April. And it was about two characters, Theo and Brannin. And Theo was introduced by holding that broken, kind of nasty-looking sword. And we had, obviously, the picture of his mother. And then that was it. And his my claim today. You've heard it first on Two Geeks and Mountain podcast. I think that this is actually on purpose. These are going to be very, very important characters, despite the fact that the trailers and everything else is focusing on Galadriel and Elrond and so on. I think Theo and Brian are going to be very, very important. There was just like a little throwaway post on the 19th of April. And included into that, they introduced obviously their official hashtag Rings of Power, because during part one, we didn't know the name of the series, so they couldn't use Rings of Power. They're using things like, hashtag LOTR on Prime and all sort of synonym to the same one. But hashtag Rings of Power was also introduced for the first time on the 19th of April. Then nothing really until the 1st of June. And this is almost like the final act of the marketing campaign, because we knew by then that the 2nd September was the day of the global release.
Yeah, and there was a lot of covers of magazines came out around that time. Empire's world exclusive Lord of the Rings has 3 collectible covers. One of them's got Galadriel on the front. Now, I remember from part 1 when we talked about it that one of the things that impressed me a lot were those almost like individual photographs of each of the characters. Now, in some respects, you didn't even get a full glimpse of the character. It might have been a sword or a gloved hand or something like that. And I love the way that they've carried on that sort of imagery with the covers of magazines like this and what they're tweeting out.
Absolutely. And what was interesting about the kind of June, July-ish period, it was almost like the keyword or the kind of the accepted campaign was all about exclusivity. So they would partner with Empire, and as you described, doing some exclusive collectible covers, you had up to 4. They would partner up with IGN, for example, and give them exclusive photos of the orc. They would partner up with Collider, fandom, Nerdist got some exclusive photos of Galgalad. And we were back to what they did with, the post that you mentioned, where you had to seek out across different platforms to essentially have the whole collection, if you will, of images, and then you could play the game of indeed matching the phase 1 teaser campaign of just a hand holding a sword or just a hand holding an apple, and of course the full photo of the individual.
Yeah, and again, I keep coming back to some of the sort of the content rules that have automatically been almost impressed upon us by the marketing gurus out there. Everybody says video, you've got to use video in your content, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of people, we know they get really stressed out. I don't want to do video. But it's a campaign like this, Pascal, that shows you that you don't actually have to do video all the time. Okay, they're promoting a video, a film series, but some of these photographs, some of these graphics are absolutely gorgeous. And I don't think we should be afraid to use static images and photographs if we can make them absolutely part of the overall campaign. Let's try and move away from this video or nothing ethos that we seem to have these days, because some of these images and some of these graphics are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely convinced that there will be, fans running websites and other platforms who've taken the trouble to gather this collection. There just may be one small criticism that I would say is that there isn't that hub, and there isn't that central destination for a fan to be able to see all of it, because this is crying out for a future book, coffee table book of the art of Rings of Power, because the photography are just amazing. So you reminded us, of course, that the teaser campaign, the teaser posters where all the characters were being revealed, but this idea of you just saw the hand, they were holding an object, you could see a bit of the costume they were wearing. So that was February. Then come July, then the full character is revealed. So on purpose, for the purpose of our show notes, I show you again that kind of very menacing kind of spiked, metal glove hand holding the sword. And we assume, and probably we now know, that it will be a Sauron. And then now we have a picture of the actor playing Sauron in full view. And on the subject of, therefore, the teaser camera of the character then, so each character now has that teaser photo of just a hand and the object. then they have the full still photography, and then they've started doing some short videos introducing the characters. So yeah, you have a full set in terms of, whether it's Elrond, whether it's Galadriel and all the others. And I'm absolutely convinced that those little kind of 1 minute short videos about the character to supplement the static posters will continue to be published throughout the series.
Yeah, and again, it just reinforces what I've just said there. All sorts of content can form part of this overall campaign. So gorgeous images and, video as well. But let's just not get overly obsessed with the video bits.
What was interesting about the posters, they went for all the sizes. You had the vertical stroke portrait, you had the squares, and you had the landscape. One thing I would say that some of them look like they are designed differently. Some of them, they look like they don't quite belong to the same family. And also, you could argue that they're breaking almost another rule. And maybe that's the difference between a TV series and cinema. One could say, there's far too many posters. Where is the one key art, the one poster that's going to basically drive the campaign? And maybe that's where TV series can do what TV series can do very differently.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I suppose if this was a film, and thinking back now to earlier reviews of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I guess it would have focused more on a one poster. But I think it is the fact that it's a television series, and then they're not allowing you to watch all of these episodes in a binge, are they? I think they're releasing 2 initially, and then each week for the remainder of the series. So effectively, you've got that longer period where I guess the multi-images, the different characters, because it's a character-based show after all. I think that gives them that space they need to spread it out over a bit of a longer period.
So we've spoken about the images, the posters that have been distributed online. They do exist as well as printed kind of items, and they were gifted to the people who attended the San Diego Comic-Con event. So, very jealous because we missed out on all of that. And you can see during the premieres online, people have got their posters signed by the different actors. But when it comes to trailers, very much like, with the posters, one could say, my goodness, there are a lot of trailers here. Which one am I meant to pay attention to? So once again, after the reveal of the teaser trailer in February, we then move into the 8th of July. So quite a few months have passed with what they call the Prime Video Sneak Peek. And what is it called like this? Well, because once it was released on the 8th of July on YouTube, I would argue, and other network, if you were a Amazon Prime subscriber, you could watch the sneak peek 2 days before anybody else. And frankly, that was funny because people were almost showing off, and YouTubers and bloggers would then try and describe what they'd seen to people and comment on it as well. So there was a bit of a race to who saw it first, which I thought was very interesting. And then the 14th of July was the real teaser, the main teaser that we'd listened to and watched together again. What was interesting about that main teaser, in terms of the way they crafted it, as far as I'm concerned, I was transported back into Middle-earth. The music, the voiceover, the different race, the landscapes, and so on. I thought they absolutely nailed it.
They are definitely keeping within what I would say is the spirit of the trilogy movies, aren't they? Or I suppose it's more than the trilogy Lord of the Rings. I think there's the Hobbit trilogy as well, I guess. But they're very much making it recognizable so that if you've seen any of those films over the last 20 years, this is going to feel like it's quite comfortable, isn't it?
And now, surprisingly, what I mean about this, Roger, from a timeline and date point of view, this was the 14th of July, and I watched it, as you have 4 or 5 times, and absolutely loving it. But a week later, on the 22nd of July, they released what they call the San Diego Comic-Con trailer. This was a 3-minute trailer, very different in terms of tonality, new scenes as well that we've not seen. But this one was focused on the story, the arc, and confirming what people have been speculating for months, including you and I, that indeed it is about the rising threat of Sauron, and shocking audiences around the world with the kind of post-credit surprise of the Balrog.
Yeah, and again, I suppose the story is the last unknown, isn't it? Because we're all very familiar with Lord of the Rings. We're all very familiar with The Hobbit. I know that the story that they're going to be telling is probably contained in the very, very large appendices that were in the Lord of the Rings books. But let's face it, I don't think anybody other than the utter geeks like us will have read those parts of the book. So I think the story is going to be almost like the big reveal, isn't it?
Yeah, no. So I can appreciate, in a way, you could say I watched the main teaser, which is taking me back into Middle Earth. I watched the San Diego Comic-Con trailer to be told about the story and essentially the threat that it's going there. And then from a video point of view, there's more for fans and people who are curious about the series to get into. So, of course, during the San Diego Comic-Con, the cast and crew had their Q&A that was live streamed on the official YouTube channel. And there's quite a few to go there. But they did do a featurette called Stories from the Legendarium. And this was looking at Galadriel in particular and the arc of... not her character, but had a wonderful, wonderful strapline. Every good quest needs a fellowship.
Yes.
They then moved on to, so from the feature, which was the 3rd of August, so soon after, San Diego, you kind of think, okay, what's next? And then suddenly, out of, again, much surprise, they released what they call the official trailer, as if we didn't have enough as it is, 23rd of August. And this is a trailer that had people thinking, I'm not sure about it. But here's the point. By the time we get to, past San Diego Comic-Con, the fans have been well looked after. They've got more posters that they could have wall space to kind of use. They have empty trailers. They've got all the coverage from the media, from print to radio. And I think, for me, that the film producer thought it is time to go after the final audience, those who are not fans of Lord of the Rings, those perhaps who have not seen the original work by Peter Jackson, by creating what I'm going to call a more universal trailer with a modern song track, and also just doing a very something very different with the structure of the trailer.
No, I think this is very important, and the fact they've added in a recognizable song is very important, because that does link it to the present, doesn't it? I think one of the issues with a series like this, and you could argue the same with Game of Thrones, I guess, as well, is that a lot of people see it as some sort of medieval type of film or TV series. And let's face it, it's a genre that some people don't like. But I think you can almost sweeten the pill a bit, can't you, by grounding it in the present and using music as one way of doing that.
Yeah, and listen, I much prefer. I'm guessing you would as well, and all the fans. I much prefer the main teaser or even the San Diego Comic-Con trailer. But from a marketing point of view, you've done your homework. You've broken down the audiences into different groups, and you address them differently. That's just the job.
That's proper marketing, isn't it? This is my customer. This is what my customer wants to hear. I give the customer the content that meets that need.
Talking of, that's the job and the marketing and so on, soon after the release of the official trailer, and I think maybe the issues around the naming of official trailer, because they've done so many, which one is the official one, they did something really interesting from an editing point of view, which I thought could be a lesson or even an example to follow. They've played with the vertical layout of videos, and they've repurposed the reaction from those who had the pleasure of attending the premieres. And I'm saying the pleasure only because I'm very jealous, of course, and I didn't get the invitation. So they did some very interesting thing with the vertical layout, where they were splitting literally the areas into 3 or 4, screens, and using it by putting different images, different videos, but also positioning the feedback of the audience. And I think I've seen this used only the once, but I've got a feeling that it's going to be emulated more and more by other brands as well as the filmmakers themselves.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And what about the music?
Oh, well, listen, people wanted, of course, they wanted Howard Shore to come back, and he did provide some of the work for the marketing. But for the series, we have Bear McCreary. So people who play video games, people who are into the world of fantasy will know the name very, very well. If you're not sure about who Bear McCreary is, well, you're in luck, because as part of the marketing, the soundtrack of Rings of Power, all 39 tracks, are available for free on Amazon Music. And actually, we'll put the link in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Now, Pascal, I just wonder, the amount of marketing that's gone into this is phenomenal. And obviously it is the most expensive TV show ever made. The expectations that this is creating, this marketing campaign, and all the different trailers, all the visuals, and 39 tracks on Amazon Music. Can this show possibly live up to the hype that they've created with all of this content?
My position is actually, Roger, is that the hype began the moment they announced they had the rights for the film. So we're going back to 2018.
Yes.
And I think what they have done, and this is the way in which I've experienced it and where I felt it, what they have done is that they have celebrated the luck of having the rights to do this work, and they wanted the fans and the newer fans to be part of it. And what they've also shown is that there are territories and there are marketing techniques that are maybe unique to the world of television that a cinema feature would not be able to do. And that to me has been the way I've done. So I don't think the marketing equate the hype. The hype was the moment they announced with that press release that we discussed as part of part one, that they had the rights, and what they've done superbly in say, can we actually almost extend how joyful this is to go back to Middle Earth, and we're going to give you lots of content to get your teeth into.
Yeah, and let's face it, they do want to create a wider audience by getting people who don't really know Tolkien's work and probably haven't seen the 6 films that have gone by. But this is a fan celebration, isn't it? And a lot of it is geared towards people like you and me, the geeks, the people who've grown up on this stuff and love this stuff. But they've had a bit of fun with the fans as well, haven't they, Pascal?
Oh yes, I mean, so to begin with, they would do little nods, like they would do almost like a mini documentary, a series they called Stories of the Second Age, where they would say, "Here's the Kingdom of Lindon," or "Here's Khazad Dûm," and so on. And what is interesting is we and I know it by heart. I mean, we joked that we know our geography of Middle Earth is better than where we live, in the real world. But this idea of creating almost like a visual encyclopedia that you can share with others, I mean, for me, where I thought, you know what, they are really, really looking after the fans when they managed to organize free screenings of the first 2 episodes at selected cinemas around the world. That was 31st of August. But they knew that nobody could make it. So what did they do instead? Well, they were doing things like a competition in partnership with Adobe Express, which interestingly you mentioned only a few weeks ago as part of marketing tech and apps. So what they've done with kind of graphic artists, they have created series of templates that you can go in to essentially create your own invitation to your Rings of Power watch party. If you're a podcaster, if you're a blogger, if you're a vlogger, you can actually create some channel art or even kind of episode art with Adobe Express using those templates. And yes, Roger, I had a good play a few days ago, and they are exquisite. They also obviously invited people to submit their fan art using the hashtag The Rings of Power. And they have created a video series called The Forge, probably in a little nod to the dwarves of Khazad Dûm. And every week there is a montage, kind of almost like a time lapse of people who have sent their artwork, and you and I, many others, can obviously enjoy it. People who've been preparing the watch parties and people who have been getting dressed as hobbits, elves, dwarves, and humans and so on have sent their pictures to the Lord of the Rings on Prime official channel using the hashtag, and they're getting a shout out from the official channel. That makes you feel very good. And of course, if you've chosen to dress as a hobbit, you're going to get some food, and they've partnered up with Marcus Cooks. This is his Instagram account, who has put together some special recipes, a taste of Middle-earth.
No, I love this. It's so interactive, isn't it? It's so inclusive. What will your watch party look like? And, well, if you're going to dress like a hobbit, you're going to need some food. It is so interactive and inclusive, and it's just generating so much excitement. And, of course, tonight, Pascal, we will be sitting down and we will be watching the first episode of The Rings of Power. And I cannot be more excited than I am now.
Honestly. And having done the research for the marketing campaign, what we're going to call part 2, these are our words, by the way, not the official line from the, Amazon Prime and so on. This is my conclusion, as I mentioned a moment ago. They have looked at a way to celebrate, the success, commercial success of securing the rights, the ability to have the financing to produce something that would be of high quality, but saying, can we have you participate in the lead up? And they're also going to continue, if you like, the celebration, because much to my surprise, because most brands don't do that and most producers don't do that, they're going to organize a regular Reddit talk where people will be able to talk to the producers and people behind, obviously, the series via the Reddit channel that they've created. Most people will let that job, forgive me, to the bloggers of and people like you and I, but they've taken the initiative to allow people to have a chat with them as well, which I think is brilliant.
Wow, what a lot of marketing has gone into this. It is genuinely a masterclass in content marketing, isn't it? And obviously they've got the budget, they need to spend this sort of money, but it really is. It will be looked back on in the future as a template for how to do a campaign for a film oblique TV series. Wow, Pascal, and I'm sure we could continue to talk about this for another half an hour, but I think we do need to try and wrap things up. So as we've said, we're going to be watching the first episode of Rings of Power later on. No doubt we'll mention in the next episode what we think of it, and we'd love to know what you think of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Leave us a comment on the video. Look for us on Twitter, and of course, Pascal, people can speak to us on something called SpeakPipe, can't they?
Yes, they can leave a voice message with suggestions, recommendations for all the different segments of the show. You go on speakpipe.com/2 Geeks and a Marketing Podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the show. Until the next episode, please go out there and make sure that your marketing is done correctly. I was Roger Edwards and he was Pascal Fintoni.